Which AFC North receiver could see a return to resurgence with a 2021 scheme change? Can one polarizing AFC running back finally achieve fantasy glory this season? And is it time to move a healthy first-round pick from last year further down your boards? Plus, the back-to-back champion in the FFPC Genesis League, Brad Kezema, will break down his attempt at a three-peat and give us some rookies he's eyeing from a dynasty perspective and more. We've got a great show for you. Farrell Elliott is here. I'm Eric Balkman. Stick around. Your high-stakes fantasy football hour starts now.
I can't stand the pressure. I've seen greater men than me, the lesser make horrible messes. Take the headphone red just 'cause it was right there in the dresser, so easy. Pick me up, kiss me, and you squeeze me.
Broadcast live and heard around the world, you are now listening to the most entertaining hour of radio on the planet. Welcome to the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour, presented by MyFFPC.com, with your hosts Eric Balkman and Farrell Elliott. The High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour is your home for analysis from the best players in the world. And now, because no one else was available, here's Eric Balkman and Farrell Elliott. And all I hear is just white noise when we're speaking. There's too much rebel from the voices in my head. I hear them singing, but I can't make out the
Thank you so much, Rob, and thank you to the Quiet Howlers. Remember to check out their music at quiethowlers.com, including a brand new spanking single as well from the Quiet Howlers, just out recently within the last week or so. Greetings and salutations, all the Bulkaholics and Ferrelliacs tuning in to the show tonight. Welcome to the latest episode of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour, presented by MyFFPC.com. I am your slightly above average host, Eric Balkman, and my co-host is indeed the definitive commissioner of fantasy football, Farrell Elliott. And Farrell, a big night for you and the Quiet Howlers tomorrow in Louisville.
Oh, Balky, yes. Tomorrow, a return to the stage for the Quiet Howlers and a show at a venue known as Headliners here, and they have worked very hard to turn this into an outdoor, socially distanced venue, the first return of a concert. The show's been sold out for weeks, and yes, it'd be great to see Shadwick and the rest of the band back on stage tomorrow night.
Yeah, no question. That'll be a lot of fun for sure. We're going to have a lot of fun on the show tonight as well, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to break down the Dolphins backfield, the Jets backfield, where we think Aaron Rodgers is going to end up playing football this year, if he does, and the two-time defending champ in the FFPC Genesis Classic League, Brad Kezema, a.k.a. Kaz of the North, is going to drop in to talk about his selections of Darren Waller, DJ Moore, Ronald Jones, and more in last week's Genesis draft that we covered right here on these airways. Shout out to the chat room right now. Feel free to post any questions you might have in there. If you want to connect with us on Twitter, the show is at HSFF Hour. I am at Eric Balkman. Farrell is at J. Farrell Elliott. Brad is on Twitter at Casmo11FF. And then, of course, check out the Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship at KFFSC.com. I just personally drafted in the Run to Daylight Championship last night. Had a lot of fun doing that and signed up for a checkered flag draft coming up on Memorial Day. So I'm very excited to do that. You can do that at KFFSC.com. Don't forget about the Draft Masters. And, of course, the main event, live or online, whether you're playing from the comfort of your own home in Cincinnati or Louisville, it is all there as well. The show's Facebook page is facebook.com/HSFF Hour. And if you want to give us a call tonight, 347-426-3682. That's 347-GAME-OVA. If you want to email us, highstakesfantasyfootball@gmail.com is where to reach us. If you have any questions for us or for Brad, now is the time to send them in. We'll try to get to all the chat room questions, tweets, and emails in the fantasy feedback segment coming up later on in the show. Thanks to our audio engineer and my best friend, Bryce, and, of course, our producer and mutual friend, Rob. Dynasty Startups back in action, going strong at the FFPC at myffpc.com. Don't forget to cash in that free $35 FFPC team when you sign up for the Football Guys Players Championship by the end of June and draft before July 15th. 2 six-figure grand prizes in that competition this year. Draft's already underway, and you can save $100 off your first team, $400 off each additional team with the FFPC main event right now, too. That's another $500,000 grand prize. $5 Cinco de Best Ball options for best balls at FFPC. Don't forget about the checkered flag at KFFSC.com and the Draft Masters there as well. Thanks to Ball Guys, Draft Sharks, NBC Sports Edge, and Rob for tonight's Fantasy Flash. Let's get into it. Rashad Bateman, the rookie receiver who was the 27th overall pick in the NFL draft this year, has been signed by the Baltimore Ravens to a 4-year, $12.6 million contract. He runs 6 foot, 190 pounds. He led the country in yards per route run from out wide, as he was a 20-year-old sophomore in the Big Ten Receiver of the Year a couple of years ago, and he was playing alongside Tyler Johnson, who's now a Tampa Bay Buccaneer. He received 61% of his snaps last year in the slot, and his career marks of 36 broken tackles and 15.7 yards per reception are still pigeonhole proof, as NBC Sports Edge put it, in the NFL, since he had at least one catch in all 31 games for the Minnesota Golden Gophers. Not the most dynamic athlete in the world, Farrell, but you got to believe him, Marquise Brown, Sammy Watkins out for the Ravens this year. That's an improvement of where they were last year. Your thoughts on Bateman, not from a dynasty perspective, but for redraft this year. What are your expectations for Bateman as a rookie catching balls from Lamar Jackson?
This is very, very dangerous fantasy territory, Balky. This is the Fugazi of fantasy football wide receivers. Last night in our draft, the KFFSC draft that you were in, he went to our beloved friend Bobby Sangerman in the 10th round. And what we're dealing with here is a player that is wonderfully skilled to do what the Baltimore Ravens need him to do. He could be an all-rookie player. He could possibly even go to the Pro Bowl, be very successful with this team, lead them in receiving, and still be a disaster in putting up fantasy numbers. There's just not enough balls in the air. Last year, Lamar threw the ball 376 times. 88 of those went to the tight end Andrews, not counting all the other secondary tight ends that are utilized in this passing attack. 2,700 yards passing for Lamar. They say they're going to open that up. They said that last year too. If he does, Balky, if they do open it up, what is that, a 20% kick? That still puts him very, very low, very in the second half of quarterbacks as far as passing yardage. I just don't see it. There were 3 games where Lamar threw the ball less than 20 times last year. And you might say, well, Farrell, those were defensive struggles where they didn't have to pass the ball. They just did it with a running attack. No, Lamar threw the ball less than 20 times. The Ravens scored 47, 38, 34 in those games. Quite frankly, is they don't have to throw the ball. This player is brought in to be a big-body receiver, to win the contested passes, to catch the ball outside of the passing window, and to block. And he's going to do all those things very successfully. And when he does get a catch, the announcers are going to talk very, very glowingly of him. But he can he'll be a great football player who will sink your fantasy team.
He went in the 10th round of the KFFSC Run to Daylight draft last night, as you said, Farrell. On average, he is going at the 11-12. That's the 11-12 turn in FFPC Football Guys drafts since those started about a week and a half or so ago. That's wide receiver 51. Certainly you're rolling the dice there, but this is right after Devontae Parker and Mike Williams, right before McCole Hardman and Jalen Reagor. That's where Bateman is indeed going. Let's talk about another receiver actually in Bateman's division. Juju Smith-Schuster was on the Adam Schefter podcast recently. He says he's going to play more outside receiver this coming season. Smith-Schuster was saying how his role is going to change after we saw him in the slot last year for 103 targets worth. He had 22 targets while he was on the perimeter, 6.5 yards per target. That's almost 2 full yards less than his career average. 8.6 yards per reception last year. That was 3.5 yards under his career average. Obviously, if you drafted Juju Smith-Schuster early last year, you're probably disappointed in his output. Farrell, are you a believer that this could be a rebound to greatness for Smith-Schuster here with more targets on the perimeter, catching balls from Ben Roethlisberger?
Yes, especially where he's being drafted, Balky. You'll give us the mojo on that, but I think that this player represents a bargain there, and he will return to some prominence, and he doesn't have to He doesn't have to play like he has in the past, but he has to play better than he did last year. The whole team does, especially towards the end. Oddly enough, he was in the slot, not a lot of yards per catch, but even out of the slot, there were poor passing attempts to him. He couldn't get open in that scenario. Moving him outside lets him get to something that's more a traditional wide receiver role for him, and we can get it in early. Steelers have to, of course, accommodate Claypool closer to the ball in the formation. So with those two players there, I really like them lining up on one side of the ball and going after it. I think it's going to be great.
Yeah, you mentioned it. I should give a shout-out to Darren Armani, fantasymojo.com. If you are playing in the FFPC, it is a must as far as all the data you can get there. And over the course of the last week and a half of the Football Guys Players Championship, Smith-Schuster is wide receiver 31, currently going in the 7th round. Think about that, too. I mean, he was like a second-round pick last year. He has fallen 5 rounds. He is now going in the 7th round, right behind Odell Beckham and Cortland Sutton, right ahead of DJ Chark and the rookie Devontae Smith out of Philadelphia. All right, so one other thing I want to get into here is a situation not of something that happened, but something that almost happened, Farrell. Field Yates from ESPN reported that the Dolphins were actually next in line to claim Kerryon Johnson before the Eagles picked him up off waivers after his release from Detroit. Now, Miami was long expected this whole offseason to either sign a running back in free agency or draft a significant one, as a rookie. Now, neither one of those things happened. And Myles Gaskin, who was, pretty much the guy last year in the Dolphins' backfield, is the guy we think again in 2021. But Farrell, if this report is to believe, maybe Miami's not done gumming up the works for Gaskin, and it's going to be buyer beware with whatever Dolphins running back you choose to roll with this year, right?
No, Bucky. I'm very bullish on Myles Gaskin, and I think that's a fine bet. Based on where he's going in the draft, I think you're getting bargain, and I think Gaskin is going to be very good. We talked about it on other shows. Field Yates, I don't know him very well. I looked him up. Seems to be another graduate of the Trent Green School of Face Design. I am sure that he is, with Kerryon Johnson talking, I'm sure that on his speed dial somewhere, one of the Rosenhaus brothers, because they represent Kerryon, and they're probably talking that up about him coming to Miami. That's an interesting landing spot for him. We don't need to see too much into this commentary. I believe whatever running back is picked up, as this column might allude to, will be standing on the sidelines cheering Gaskin on to 1,100 yards a year and 8 touchdowns. I have big belief in Gaskin. And, if we want to talk about running backs that are already on the roster, very, very late round pick at Miami was Jared Dokes, and I like him. If you don't know him and are not familiar with the work he did at the University of Cincinnati, you ought to take a look. He's got that trait of a winning runner, good size, and he's overcome a lot of adversity. He missed a year in Cincinnati, which is a whole other story that we don't have time to get into here. But Jared Dokes is a very good player. And I'll be glad to see him get some of that opportunity in Miami.
Well, 244th overall pick in the draft, 5'11", 230. As a guy who didn't start until his senior season, which was a redshirt season at Cincinnati. But 75 yards per game, almost 5 yards a carry. That was actually the lowest of his career. So certainly a player to watch out for, especially when you get later on into your FFPC Dynasty rookie drafts or later on in best balls, or even later on in Football Guys Players Championship drafts, somebody that you'll want to keep in mind. I do want to point out, too, that Myles Gaskin is going as running back 23 right now. That is at the 506. He is going right after Josh Jacobs and Travis Etienne. He is going right ahead of Javonte Williams, Kareem Hunt, and Mike Davis. Keeping it on. Oh, actually, let's go to a question from the chat room right away, Farrell. I hesitate to ask you this because I think I know where your Pittsburgh Steelers receiver loyalty lies, but Hudson Kern-Reeve wants to know if we can rank Juju Smith-Schuster, Deontay Johnson, and Chase Claypool in FFPC points this year. I'm guessing you would probably put them Claypool